I've never done anything like this before, so this is kind of a new experience. I've done some gaming videos before, I've talked a little bit while I've been doing those, but never anything that was really just me sitting down ruminating on whatever things I was thinking about at the time. And I figure that the way things are going and everything that I've been hearing going on in the world, whether it's political, whether it's sociological, I keep hearing a lot of arguments from a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives, and I keep hearing the same things over and over and over again. There's a definite gap in the conversation. There are things that are missing. And I think that these are things that are important because it's a bit like trying to figure out what a puzzle is with only half of the pieces in play. I mean, with enough pieces, you don't need the entire puzzle to be built. You can just simply look at it and say, well, look at that, that's a horse, or that's a chicken, or that's a rainbow, and yeah, that's great. But if all you have are some green grass pieces, some blue sky pieces, some clouds, and some animals, is it a dog park? Is it a farm? It's hard to tell what the big picture is. And I think that that's where we're at right now. And I think it's intentional to a certain degree. Not intentional in that there's people actively trying to take pieces away, although that is possible, I suppose. I think it's more intentional in the fact that there are people who don't want the whole picture. It benefits them in some way to say, look, this is what we have, this is really all we need, and this is just what we're going to work with. And so I've been quiet for a very long time. I've kept to things like comment sections, trying to put the ideas out there. But eventually someone has to speak up about some of these things. And if you keep waiting for someone to do it, the end result is that no one does it. So I suppose here I am. And the thing that I want to talk about right now is empathy. And I think that that's important right now because a lot of people, I don't believe, are even thinking about empathy at all. And the other result is that there are some people who don't even know what it means. And I think that we need to start with the latter first, because if you can't even define the words that you're using, you can't even have a conversation. So, when I mention empathy to a lot of people, the end result of what I get is they think that this is the kind of thing that you have for somebody who has been injured, or they lost their house in a fire, or, their dog died, something like that. They think this is empathy. I'm empathizing with you, and that's not right. It's not far off the mark, but it's not right. That's actually sympathy. Sympathy, according to a dictionary definition, are feelings of pity or sorrow for someone else's misfortunes. And sympathy is absolutely valid if something bad happens to someone else, even if you can't relate to them. You can still feel bad for them. I mean, think about someone who has, say, lost their parent, okay? Maybe you still have both of your parents. And so they lost their parents. You can tell that they're distraught, they're grieving. You feel bad for them. Even though you can't entirely relate. Or maybe you're someone who didn't have your parents, you didn't have either parents. Maybe they left when you were young, maybe you're an orphan, and so someone else's parents died, and you're literally just like, I wish that I could empathize with you, but I don't even have that frame of reference. So you can have sympathy for them, you can feel bad that this happened to them, and you can want to do anything you can to make things better for them. But that's not empathy. That's sympathy. No. Empathy, if I just tab over here, if I can reach my mouse. Empathy, by the dictionary definition, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. And that is the core of what I want to talk about right now, because we have a vast, vast gap of empathy in the world right now. And I think that this is kind of a new thing, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure. I'd have to do some serious research into that to find out exactly how and when this gap in empathy really showed up. But I think it's the one thing that is driving all of our problems right now. What we have primarily in the US, but also around the world, whether it's political, whether it's religious, is not a lack of, but an actual refusal to share in someone else's experience. And this is a recipe for just absolute disaster on every conceivable scale we can think of. And I want to make an analogy to really talk about that. I like to use chess in my analogies because I think that chess is a great example for a lot of things. Chess is cooperative and competitive. It's cerebral, yet it can be actually very intense. You have to say, I am going to go into this game and I'm going to try and beat you. And it's very competitive. But you also have to sit down and say, I'm going to beat you, but we are both going to agree to abide by these rules. That's cooperative. And it can be very intense because when you're in competition with other people, you can be prone to making rash decisions, impulsive decisions, acting before thinking. But in chess, it is a very cerebral game. You must think, or else you will have no chance. And that's the point that I want to get at right now. See, in chess, they say that when you're playing, you must be thinking not about your next move, but you must be thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead. Some of the great chess masters will say you have to be thinking upwards of 20 moves ahead. And some people just say, moves ahead, I just do whatever seems right at the time and it all seems to work out. And those people are either incredibly lucky or they are incredibly talented, and we hate all of them because they're naturally good at it and we have to work really hard. Okay, so ignoring that one, I don't know why I went off on that tangent. When you're playing chess, you can think about what you're going to do next. You look at the board, you look at your side, you look at their side, and you say, if I move this piece here, I'm protected and I can take this piece. If I put this piece here, I'm leaving myself a little bit open, but I can take this other piece over here. But that's only half of the equation. Sure, you can move your pieces and you know exactly what you're going to do. The problem comes in that you're not thinking about what your opponent is going to do. So, sure, you move one piece here, but then what do they do? And this is where empathy comes in. You need to be able to share in someone's experience to see things from their side, to stand in their shoes, whatever metaphor or saying you want to use. You have to be able to turn the board around and say, if I was them, what would I be doing? And importantly, why would I be doing it? So you move your pawn up to this position to threaten the opponent's knight, and you have to ask yourself, okay, if I was now them, what would I be doing? Well, would I want to protect that knight? Maybe. I could move it, I could guard it, or I could let you have it and perhaps set myself up for something else down the line. Once you can look at things from the other side, you can see things from their perspective, you can best judge by your own intuition what they're going to do. And then you can plan around that. So you can say, I'm going to put my piece here and threaten theirs. They're going to guard that piece. So they say, you can take it if you want, but I'm going to punish you for it. And so therefore, if you knew that was going to happen, would you change what you're about to do? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe in the end you decide that, no, I really want that piece and I really want this part of the board, so I'm going to move another piece up there to threaten it too. And we'll turn this into a great big fight of each of us taking each other's pieces until there's nothing left on the board. Or perhaps I leave that pawn there just to threaten, and I go off and do something else. And leave that part of the board tied up and what's the word I'm looking for? Denied to both of us, and we focus on something else. This is the root of empathy. Going back to my example of losing someone's parents. I mean, if somebody loses their parents, they're depressed, they're distraught, and you can actually put yourself in their circumstance and say, look, I've been there, this has happened to me, I know exactly what you're feeling. And this is something that helped me get through this right now, and perhaps you can use your experiences combined with sympathy for what they're going through right now to put them on a path towards grieving and recovery. That's a more common hopefully not every day. There's 7 billion people on the planet, so it's an everyday occurrence. It's not every day in your life. But this is something that is actually useful. It's something that almost all of us will have to go through at some point. Whether we're on the grieving side or the sympathetic side. This is just something that happens. Right now, in the U.S., we are in great turmoil. And part of the problem is there is no empathy to be found. There's a very small amount. You can find it in some people, and you can find a little bit of it on one side of our political divide, but by and large, it's kind of absent on neither. Since the last election, we have had Republicans and we have Democrats, and as far as they're concerned, the Republicans believe that all the Democrats are evil communists, and they are going to destroy the country. And on the Democrat side, we have all the evil fascists who are going to destroy the country. And that's it. That's where things are. At this point, it's literally, I have to stop the other side no matter what the cost. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Even if you could be successful at what you're doing, it's not going to work. And the reason is pretty simple. Even if you could just wipe out the other half of the party, just Thanos snap them right out of existence. Well, now you don't have enough people left in your country to keep running it the way it was. And so whatever you had planned is going to fail anyway because you can't continue on that path. That road is forever closed to you. It's done. It's over with. You got what you wanted, and now you have to make a new plan. But what we do have is an actual lack of empathy, because when you look at what the Democrats want, they're saying we need to have things like healthcare reform. We need to have justice reform. At least, if you're talking to the sensible Democrats. You have some people that are so far out in left field that not only are they not going to get what they wanted, but they cannot get what they want. If they actually got what they wanted, it would be the end of everything anyway. That's not really important, though, to this conversation. What is important to this conversation is that once upon a time, you would be able to propose something like, say, I want universal free healthcare. And then you would say, this is what I want, these are the reasons why I want it, and then we sit down and discuss it. And you get the other side that would say, we cannot have universal healthcare. There is no way to fund it, there is no way to make it work, we can't do it, we would bankrupt the entire country trying. And maybe they have a point. I don't know. What I do know is that both extremes are not going to work. You can't just give it all away for free to everybody, and you also can't just say, well, sorry, but you can't pay for it, therefore you're going to die. What we need is a middle ground. And a middle ground requires compromise. Now, compromise means that we both have to sit down and agree to play by the same rules. And you cannot compromise if you cannot empathize. You have to say, okay, they want to get free health care. Why do they want to get free health care? And as it turns out, the reason why they want to get free health care is because health care is expensive, and some people are not able to afford it. Therefore, they are coming at this from a sympathetic point of view, saying that I want to help these people, and this is how I think I can do it. On the other side, they can say, look, if we give everything away for free, not from free, I can talk. If we give everything away for free, eventually there's going to be nothing left, and the people who can pay will be in the same boat as the people who can't pay, because there will simply be nothing left. So what do we do from here? You have to understand that on one side, you have to be empathetic here. They're looking at the system we have. Is it perfect? No. But will breaking it somehow make it better? The answer to that is also no. We cannot destroy it in a vain attempt to try and save it. That's like breaking a bone because you think that breaking it is somehow going to make it better. And while I'm sure there are going to be some arguments about, hardening bones through training and all that, the fact is that you're not going to simply hit it with a hammer and say, look, I've made it better. So you have to be able to empathize with your opponent so that you can come together and say, this is an agreement that both acknowledges your point, it acknowledges my point, and while neither one of them gets everything, neither one may be perfect, this is something that works for both of us. But what we have right now is not that. When you have people on one side who are saying, they are the enemy of everything I believe in, there is no compromising with them, and there is nothing that I would give. You have abandoned empathy entirely and said that I no longer wish to empathize with this person. I simply want him destroyed. Now, whether that's coming from the right or the left, you can look at this from whichever way you want, because it does go both ways. But regardless of which way it goes, what is the answer to that? When you have one person who has said, I refuse to empathize with this perspective, then the only answer on the other side is, I can empathize with this person who refuses to do so with me, and the best case result is that I will cede ground to them and get nothing in return. That is the best case scenario. If this person says that I want $100 and you say that you want $100 and we could come to an agreement of $50 for each of us, but the other person says that I want $100 and I want you to have $0, then the only agreement that you can come to is the other person gets $100 and you get nothing. So your only option here is to cede the ground to them and receive nothing, or to stand on your own side and simply say, no. If you're not willing to empathize with me, I'm not going to empathize with you either. I can't. For the good of my own interests and the preservation of myself, I can't. And you cannot progress like that. The ironic thing here is that you have people who actually call themselves progressives who are the worst when it comes to this. The so-called progressives who say we must have progress by any means necessary and there will be no argument against it. Well, congratulations. You have just shown that because you refuse to have any compromise on these issues, then they're going to be stonewalled. You have insisted upon being the unstoppable force, and thus you have created the immovable object. This is a problem. This is a problem that we all have everywhere around the country, everywhere around the world. I've been using Democrat and Republican, conservative, liberal, progressive, and all that, but the same thing goes for religion. How long have the Christians, Jews, and Muslims been killing each other? For that matter, how long have the Muslims been killing each other? All the different various sects of them. How long have the Christians been killing each other? They're not nearly as bad about it, but after the church broke during the Reformation, and there's now, like 4 dozen different sects of Christianity? Yeah, some of those have gotten kind of bloody. And why? Because now you're not even dealing with compromises, you're dealing with articles of faith. You're saying, look, this is what I believe, I'm not compromising what I believe, and you have one of 2 options. You can either leave my site now and stop speaking this blasphemy to me, or I'm going to remove you from my site, and therefore remove your blasphemy. And the end result of this has been thousands of years of sectarian violence and war. I think that's the right term, sectarian violence? Because they're different sects? Yeah, I got this. It's a lack of empathy. And when you're dealing with articles of faith, it's even worse, because there's nowhere to even start on that one. I mean, you got the Christians who say that Christ was the Son of God, and you have the Jews who say, I don't know about that. I mean, he was important, but the Son of God? And then you have the Muslims who don't even believe any of that, and they have their holy divine prophet Muhammad, and they're not even going to give a second to listen to anyone else. There's nowhere to go from there. And that's where we're at right now. I don't have an answer to how to fix that. That is far beyond me, and I'm not even going to pretend to be capable of entertaining the conversation. I'm sure that I might even get a few nasty comments about what I've already said, given that half of it was probably wrong. But I do live in the U.S., I do listen to the news, I listen to the opinions, I listen to what people are saying both on the ground and in the halls of Congress and all that. Nobody is willing to even give the other side a chance. It's either submit and do as I say, or get out of my way. And there's no way you can build from that. That's where it's got to start. Unfortunately, knowing that that's where it has to start doesn't actually make it any easier, because if one side decides to lay down their arms and say, fine, let's come to the table, if the other side is unwilling, then it doesn't matter. It's like being caught in a Mexican standoff, where everyone's got guns pointed at each other. One person says, all right, I'm going to lay down my guns, only for the other side to say, great, opportunity, and then blow them away. It has to be on all sides at the same time. And all sides have to be willing to do it. Not a fake gesture, not some kind of symbolic thing where it's just like, well, I'm going to lay down my arms now, but I'm coming back later with a cannon. No, it has to be a genuine effort on everyone's side. I don't know that anyone's willing to anymore. I've heard a few people that have made whispers about willing to, but as long as the other side is willing to destroy them as soon as they're able to, then what good does it do us? That just means that you have one side who's willing to let themselves be destroyed. But then again, if they stand up and defend themselves by any means necessary, then we're right back where we started. I wonder sometimes, because there's a lot of talk of civil war right now, what the people who fought in the last Civil War thought. Because there were a lot of things that preceded that. It didn't just... nobody woke up back in the 1800s and said, you know what? Tired of being here. Don't like the United States. Gonna secede. And got together with a few friends and said, yeah, let's do that. And then they seceded, and then there was a war, and then it was over. No, it wasn't that simple, and didn't take that short amount of time. There were a lot of things that happened. There were a lot of states' rights issues. Slavery, of course, was a big one. You had one side that said, we're no longer going to tolerate you having slaves. The other one said that we need the slaves. And they said, well, you know what, we're going to force you to. And then there was state rights issues. And there were a lot of other things that went into it as well. But I have to wonder, it's just like, at some point, did somebody say, look, can we sit down and talk about this? Only for another side to say, no, we are past the point of discussion. We're no longer going to discuss it. You will do as we say, or else we will punish you for it. To which the other side said, that's it then. I have no other options. You have taken my options away. I wanted to sit down and talk to you about it. You didn't want to. I wanted to find a compromise. You didn't want to. I wanted to negotiate. You didn't want to. You wanted me to do as you said, or else. Essentially, it was a terroristic hostage situation. Either do as I say, or I kill the hostages. And the hostages are you. I just hit my mic. Stop using your hands when you're just talking. Okay, so this is getting long. I want to tie this up here. The general thing that I wanted to get out of this was, until both sides, and it has to be both sides at the same time, are willing to sit down and work this out, there's no point. There's nothing left. Empathy is what we need right now. We need it from everyone, and we need it from all sides. Was it Jefferson, or was it someone else who said, I think it was Hamilton, who said, I may disagree what you have to say, but I would defend to the death your right to say it. I think at the core of that statement right there is empathy. Because it is saying, I can see why you want to have your speech. I understand why you want to speak out, because I want to. This is something that we can both understand from each other. And we've lost that. Now we live in a world where you have people saying, I don't care why you want to say what you want to say, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. I simply want you to stop saying it. That's where we're at. And until we get people to stop that way of thinking, there's no other way out. Maybe something will happen, something that can give me a little bit of hope here. I've heard some people who have made arguments similar to this, but I've never heard anyone make this actual argument before. So here I am. And as they say, someone's got to do it. I'm going to leave off here. But this will not be the last time I do this. I have other things that I want to talk about, things like logic, things like critical thinking, all things that I think are absolutely necessary, but we seem to be desperately missing. So, yeah, that's it. I'll talk to everyone later. For now, take care.